Welcome, everyone, to our podcast. This time, Nurturing Nature Schools with our co host, Amber Simons. And Amber Simons is with Unbound Earth School. She is incredible. And if you are starting a nature school or thinking about it, definitely get a hold of her. But today, we are talking about some interesting things around equity. And so, Amber is going to really lead the conversation today, and I'm super excited to support her. So, whether you are a founder, educator, a parent, this conversation is going to mean so much to you. And so, with that, Amber, please take it away. Tell us all the things around equity and everything you're going to share with us today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. Thanks again for this opportunity to be here with you and to share more stuff that I'm passionate about. Yeah, I'm Amber. I'm the founder of Unbound Earth School. Um, you can find out more about our programs through previous episodes, but just a quick rundown. We started as a drop-off program for mixed ages 0 to 12, and then eventually went to all ages. And then, kind of over the course of time, we became a cooperative program versus a drop-off. Um, and so now we're more of a community-led program and currently focusing on building earthen ovens with communities and kind of sharing all these ideas through the earthen oven. So that's a very quick synopsis. You'll have to go back in time and learn more or reach out.
Yes.
But yeah, today really wanted to talk about how, in my perspective, true democracy can equal true equity. And so Megan has been so willing to let me share some of this stuff, and we've been going back and forth and kind of figuring out the points that we really want to hit on. And so I think where I'd like to start is just going over some of the um, behavior points that Megan and I can kind of elaborate on that I've experienced in the classroom and that Megan has probably experienced in the classroom or through some of her clients that she's helped, and how democratic environments can be very beneficial to some of these challenges or some of these things or maybe goals that your program might have. And then after that, we're going to go into really what is all of this about? What is true democracy? What is the democratic environment? What are you talking about? Yada, yada, yada. So, um, when you're talking about democratic environments, another way that I will refer to this is community-led decision making. And so
Mm.
again, we'll get more into it in a few minutes, but just remember community-led decision making. Okay. And so these type of environments, they're not unique to me. We'll get into that too, but they truly can lead to autonomy, self-governance, freedom, and therefore responsibility.
Mm.
And so that's kind of the first behavior section that I wanted to touch on. And so um, our program has always been democratic and fully mixed age, like I said, and been involved in our decision making from the learners to the caregivers to the community members that surround us and support us, et cetera. And so um, learners and members that are integrated into a democratic setting, they end up having this really great sense of self-governance, right? And so that is also something that you can call autonomy. And I feel like a lot of caregivers really have desire for their children and their learners to have that sense of self-governance and autonomy. And so yeah, it's a great thing to think about. The idea is great, but then the practice of it is where it really comes in, and it takes a lot of consistency. But in this type of environment, all members are allowed to make decisions that are best for them as
Mm.
well as hear from their peers, right? And so, since there's no top down approach to decisions, members have what I call true freedom, and that organically is going to result in responsibility. And
Yes.
so, it's a really cool thing to think about. And so, are these some of the things that you might have touched on with some of your clients? Like, okay, we have this issue of freedom and autonomy. Maybe there's not enough. Maybe this person has too much. And then where does responsibility come into that? Are those things that you hear from your clients?
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, no matter what kind of setting that we're working in, whether it's our own children, older kiddos, others kiddos, teams, even working with adults, when we can invite their voice, we get their buy-in. And
Yeah.
that leads to taking responsibility because they've agreed, whether it's a actual physical, very, very apparent agreement, or it's just an assumed agreement because they do have buy-in. That's why choices are so powerful within whatever we're doing with kiddos, so that, they have a voice in what they're doing. And when we get that voice, that buy-in, we're so much more of a cooperative team because they feel seen and heard and they want to contribute to the end goal, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely the reflection that I see, like in my experience through being a part of that skillful leadership team that it takes to, see this type of setting through. And so I'll just give a quick example under this. So sometimes it sounds like, okay, everybody's got freedom and self-governance. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So kids are just running around and doing whatever they want, and it's crazy and chaotic, right? Well, yeah, some of the time that's true, but
Mhm.
because that's with any setting. But like we just both touched on, with the power of choice, you automatically have responsibility. And if you have space for voting and agreements, and if you have boundaries, and everybody is learning about those and participating and cooperating, then you have responsibility and things start to become equitable. And so just a quick example. So our program has always been fully outdoors. And so if you're outdoors, you're automatically going to come across mud sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And in particular, me, I love mud. I build ovens out of mud. So there's usually mud around. But there's always this moment when there's mud, that mud gets thrown and a mud fight starts, right? It's going to happen. If you work outside, you've already seen it. And so, with these types of settings, with community led decision making, democratic style environment, okay, mud fight has ensued. And some people are really into it, and some people probably aren't into it, right? So, just is going to depend on the day, who's there, the environment, if you've eaten enough food, if you've had enough water, yada, yada, yada. So now we have this moment. Okay, so, a skillful leadership could be able to come in and say, okay, can you raise your hand if you want to play mud fight? And then if everybody raises their hand, okay. And if the space is equitable, there's nothing that can get damaged, or, mud isn't going to destroy something, then they can stay right there and continue. But you're probably going to have some hands that don't raise, and they're going to say, there's some people that say, no, I don't want to play mud fight. And so that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, so maybe you already have a designated space for mud fights to happen, or maybe you need to go ahead and vote and discuss and negotiate where that space is going to be and where the not mud space is going to be. So it's this beautiful opportunity for pretty much any age and any ability can, like you said, buy in and have those choices and be able to coexist, right? And so,
Mm.
maybe it's a really quick decision and boom, it's good. Maybe it takes 5 or 10 minutes, and maybe the mud fight goes on and it starts spreading out to people who don't want to get muddy again. And then you come back in and you continue, repeat, repeat. And so that's just a really quick example of how something that you're probably going to come across if you haven't already, and something that's really easy to move through in this democratic way.
Yeah.
And then if you're doing this, then you have the equity. You have equity for the space. There, you're having a mud fight where nothing can get damaged. You have equity for peers and the members, because people who do want to play mud fight and want to throw mud and get muddy and they don't care if it's in their eyes, they can go over there and do that and then learn. And maybe they get mud in their eye and they decide they're done, so they can change their mind and opt out. And then you have the group that is equitable, that doesn't want anything to do with it and wants to do something completely different. So again, just quick little
I
example.
Well, I have to definitely comment because love that example. And what I would encourage our listeners to think about is all of the processes during everything you described is so much learning and good
Yeah.
work. It's, when I'm talking with the school about, gosh, getting all the snowsuits on, it's so frustrating. We don't actually get outside, but for like 4 minutes because we spent the time
Yeah.
putting, and unless they are a fully outside program, which clearly there's lots of benefits to that, but there's still so much gold and goodness in that process. And just like you're saying, that's problem solving that the kiddos are doing with an adult, not doing it for them, but co-creating that equity, that space that is fair and serves everybody. That is amazing. And I think a strategy or a positive behavior tip that I would just um, invite everyone to think about, and there's not is okay, the strategy is called front loading. And so what that might look like is when you're at some point before, the mud happens, collecting everybody and saying, okay, and then coming up with a plan together for the mud. But what I want to say too is sometimes in the moment is an okay thing to work through. I'm a foster mom, so I'm always thinking like 6 steps ahead. How can I keep kids successful with learning as like the sprinkle on top? But with, a more um I want to say sophisticated. I don't know, a more, with kiddos who are more familiar with this rhythm, maybe we don't have to do that so much. We can just let them go in the moment and then reel them back in real time versus front loading so much. So it's an interesting way to think about that. Either way, the outcome is the same. Is, equity. We're looking at the environment, seeing how we can keep things successful. But yeah, I think that's very, very interesting. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you too with the difference in the front loading versus the more present. And because that's always going to be a balance because yeah, I can sit here and talk about all this and there's been very successful outcomes, but it took a long time to get to that point. Along the way, there was so much, variance and something that we've already spoken about, we'll talk a little bit more about later is skillful leadership started with me and my assistant. That was the only skillful leadership. And then that was sprinkled out to other caregivers and other ages. So it does skillful leadership.
We froze. Oh no. I'm not sure if that's Amber or me. I think it's Amber. All right, hold on, everybody. We got a little tech issue. We're just gonna wait for Amber to come back on. I may be frozen for her. So if you can hear me, please think about as she comes back on, please think about that idea of, what's the end goal? Obviously, it's equity, right? We want cooperation, cooperation. And how do we get there? Is it front loading before we enter the thing that's going to happen, or is it during the thing that's likely going to happen? Is it thinking about which way it can go? And there's value in each one. So I don't know if that's a new term for you, that front loading. It is one of the most powerful strategies, and used with intention, it just reduces so much friction. And of course, we don't want to reduce all friction because kiddos need those opportunities to learn, right? Oopsies are opportunities to learn. And sometimes it's nice to reduce some friction. So we can do that with front loading. And I'm just going to talk as oh, here she comes. Yay, there you are. You're back. Wonderful. I was just
Today.
recapping everything that we talked about.
Okay,
Okay, girl.
good deal. Okay, so any other questions about that, or you think I can move on to
Yeah,
the behavior point two? Yeah.
let's
Okay.
move on.
The next thing is connection. And so this is something
Mm,
that, again, I'm positive that people are coming to you like, oh, connection and making contact and like connecting with our learners, connecting with our assistants, connecting with our caregivers, all the things, right? So this is a prime example of, why I advocate for community-led decision making. So it fosters deep connection to oneself, to peers, environment, to one's God and spirituality, et cetera, et cetera. Having autonomy over your choices is really critical to fostering this type of deep connection. So, like having a connection to, that uh, aspect of choice is going to build those social emotional skills. You're going to have confidence in yourself, so you're going to have confidence in talking to others and confidence that others are going to be able to do what's right for them too. And so this just really community-led decision making creates spaces where communication and connection are critical to the community's thriving, in my opinion. And so this is a good time for, in my opinion, to talk about how this kind of works for younger learners and younger members, because, you have learners and members who are a bit younger or maybe different developmental abilities, different physical abilities, whatever it might be. And so maybe they can't necessarily opt into voting on this choice versus this choice. But I just wanted to touch on how that could look
yeah.
as they grow up in this type of environment, how it gets integrated. And so one particular child that was in our program, they started when they were closer to 3 years old, which is really young, right? And so whether it's just a young member of the group, prefrontal cortex is not developed, they don't have a lot of impulse control, et cetera, et cetera. So how does this work? Well, when they came into our environment, they really had this idea of themselves that they couldn't do anything. And I'm not kidding. Like you, everything was done for this child at home. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that there was no sense of autonomy, no sense
Yeah.
of body spatial awareness.
Mm.
Um, and that doesn't have to be a 3 year old. This can travel all the way up, So this just happened to be, just a younger learner. And so over time in our setting, being exposed to this whole idea of like, well, we're here together, we're a team. This is what this person needs, this is what that person needs. How can we work together even if we don't agree? We can take our time, be present, move slower, low ratios, yada, yada, yada. And so over time, the equity would come down to other members, caregivers, et cetera. So in the case that, you know, another child really needed hands-on or one-on-one, and this child needed something that they actually could physically do, they just needed help learning how to do and help practicing it, like taking their coat off or unzipping their lunchbox, putting their snack trash in the trash can. So at first, again, this learner was convinced they couldn't do any of that. But over time, for the equity of the group, they eventually had to throw their own trash away or
Mhm.
zip up their own lunchbox, et cetera, et cetera. And it didn't take a whole lot of time for those things to start happening. And as soon as a few of those boxes started getting checked, this child's confidence went through the roof. I
Mm.
mean, once they could start doing one or two little things, um, and again, it was as a result of equity for the group. It's just this person needs this, and you have to wait or you have to do it yourself, kind of thing. So those are kind of the choices. So eventually they started doing it.
Yeah.
So as soon as their confidence goes up, they start having this ability to connect more. They're already connected more with themselves at this point. So now they're able to connect more with their peers and their environment. When the child first came to us, they were, if they felt misunderstood or not heard or inequitable, if they felt inequitable, they would generally, their voice would get really loud and high pitched, and their body would start taking up a lot of space, right? So hitting, yelling, throwing, those types of things. But through this process and through a relatively short time, a few months, they were able to realize that they had different choices. They could just slow down, they could do what they could themselves, and then they could ask for help. Their communication improved, literally, their speech improved. They came to us with um, what the parents thought were like speech delays. Maybe they had been labeled that, or maybe they were just guessing, but so fast their motor skills improved, their speech improved, their connection improved, etc. So again, just a really quick example that it has so many layers to it, but just because we practice true democracy, we ended up with true equity
Oh,
for the group. It's just
I
over and over and over.
yes. And so that also highlights back to the mud. And what I wrote down here is trust. And I
Yeah,
think connection, whenever we connection lets a child or anyone else know I see you and I hear you and
yeah,
you deserve to take up space here. And when we give them that time, and I love your example of you can either wait and I'll take care of it and
yeah,
I'll help you through this in a little bit, or because I'm busy right now. And kids really just kind of do the thing. That's actually a
yeah,
very important or very effective strategy.
yeah.
But when we trust kids that they're going to get it, that they're going to do it, and they can feel that, and they start to do the thing and they start to trust themselves. And then it's this full circle of trust. They trust us, that we can trust them, then they trust themselves. And like you said, that confidence skyrockets, and they don't have to get so big in their space and their high pitched voice because they do have more trust in themselves that they can meet their own need or wait to help, for someone else to help them get that need met.
Yeah,
Um, I
absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, trust.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention too, like their confidence increase.
Mm.
And then this is the part where it's like, this is another reason that you might be so interested in this is because once you've what we're talking about is regulation in the body, right? So they're finally
Mhm.
like regulated, right? So then they can focus and then
Mhm.
they can learn. So if you
Yeah.
want real learning, like
Wow.
here are the steps that it kind of takes to get to that point because nobody can learn when their needs are not met. Like you're
Yeah.
not, that's not the thing that your brain is going to be able
Yeah.
to do. You need to meet the need and then you're focused and set up for true learning, right?
Yes. And
So,
just to stay on that for just a second longer, when the guide can be present in there, there's not probably a lot of need for correction. Just if that child is having a higher voice and a bigger body space, having a guide just be present and letting that child borrow some of their regulation for that co-regulation. That child learns in the right way what their behavior is getting them, and they're able to, like you said, slow down, engage, learn,
yeah.
and they're not being punished, they're not being rushed through, but with that sense of safety and trust. I think all things are possible for sure.
Yes,
Yes.
100%. Yes.
All right. What's next?
Just another good reason. Okay, last one as far as behavior goes and things that are challenging and things that generally come up, and I'm sure that you've encountered this too, is bullying, right?
Ah,
So bullying is just one of the biggest reasons that families leave conventional schooling, right?
mhm.
So it's one of the biggest needs for alternative education programs. It's just the way that it is. Um, and so bullying is obviously an issue. Uh, and it's also very subjective. And
Yep.
so people don't want to hear that, and I know that because I've had these conversations over and over again. And that's why I tell people I love bullying because
Mhm.
bullying is just another one of those things that's organic. It's going to happen and it can end up equitable, but it takes skillful leadership. So, um, community centered decision making, each
Mm,
member gets ample time and space to voice their perspectives and inequities, while the group can come together to formulate agreements that actually do work for everyone involved. It
yes.
sounds like a utopia dream, but it's not, and it's so possible. But
It,
it doesn't make it easy. There isn't a box, there isn't a checklist, there isn't a list of code of conduct that is going to work for this. This has to be something that's devised in real time for your community and adaptable and flexible. And most importantly, it takes skillful leadership to, again, those things that we talked about at the beginning, knowing how to have nonviolent speech and
mhm.
trauma informed language. And those are things that, skillful leadership will sprinkle the seeds of in the community. And then at some point, the skillful leadership will grow. Um, so we need to be able to hear each other. What is bullying to you? Okay. So most people are going to say hurting each other, stealing things, and things like hurtful words, things like that. And so really like peeling those things back and saying, okay, so what our agreements generally end up being in community is ask before you touch. That really hits the nail on the head. Like, okay, do we agree to ask before we touch? And that could be
Mhm.
people, things in the environment. Um, so consent based permission and just that awareness of like, oh, I can ask before I do something. I can pause before I do something, right?
Mhm.
So that's one is, and then I would say that's really where a lot of it stems from is just asking. And then if you're already having this space where there's self-governance and there's time and space for discussion and everybody's opinion can actually be heard and we can come to equitable outcomes for that space, that group at that time, um, then the bullying just disappears. It becomes this thing is like, oh, well, the real bully is me to myself, right? It's this whole self awareness thing. And so skillful leadership takes peeling back our own inner bully,
Yep.
checking it, making sure we've got that self awareness. Like you were saying about co regulation, if our cup is relatively full, we have some that people can pull from and we can co
Mhm.
regulate. We're not going to bully ourselves or others as much. But if our cup is really low, we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to need a little bit of co regulation from somebody else, or we're going to need to go do those things that fill up our cup, or we're going to be bullying ourselves and others. And so skillful leadership demonstrates that. And then less skillful leadership learns that and becomes the skillful leadership. And again, that doesn't have to be a grown up. Uh, it might start that way, and that's okay. But over time, if you're consistent with these practices and um, you're going to see 5-year-olds be the skillful leadership. They're going to be the
Mhm.
ones who go up and say, can we have a meeting? Because I'm feeling this way, and I just want to make sure that we're all equitable here.
Um,
Um, so yeah, anything on that before I give my
Yes.
example?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I knew
Yes.
it.
You're like, I'm just my face. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure you
big
can
one.
see that. So I agree with you 100%. Bullying is subjective, and I think it's a catch-all term that catches all uncomfortable, not all, but a lot of uncomfortable feelings that we as the adult may have. And then
Yep.
obviously kids use this label, this word also to describe their own discomfort. And so I do think the word bullying is overused. However, it's an opportunity to come together, connect, and problem solve together. And something, when a child or that, you know, that 5-year-old child that kind of calls a meeting, or even that child that may be quote unquote the bully,
Mhm.
um, when a meeting is called and there is this time and space for equity for everyone getting to contribute their voice, again, that goes back to power and getting buy-in. So if we think of why bullying happens, it's likely mostly for control. This child is needing some sense of control. And so if our guides are, skillful in helping kiddos meet that capability, fill that capability bucket, they will have a net less need to find ways for control. So there's that, and their connection bucket too. So if guides can, and I'll just say that again because that wasn't very clear. If guides can kind of stand back and look at each child's essence and kind of see what that child is needing, and they can top off that connection bucket. And I call them buckets. You said cups, or that capability bucket. And so when we can do that, we really reduce the need for agitating behaviors or that type of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that you kind of mentioned is, you know, and something that I talk about a lot is behavior replacement. So it is really not very effective when we just tell someone to stop a behavior, stop bullying, stop hitting,
Yep.
stop this, stop that. When we can get their buy-in, offer some choices, ask for ideas for some replacement behaviors, it goes so much more smoothly, and we're not leaving their brains in this stuck space. So
Yep.
I always recommend, if we're going to say stop, fine, but help invite another alternative. I would often not even say stop in the first place because that invites resistance and a defensive dignity. But when we can just help them replace that behavior, things go so much more smoothly. So, yeah, those are the three
Yes.
things I wanted to add.
It's so true. Yeah. It's like that's why I wrote this article, Why I Love Bullying, because the other side of this is
Mhm.
that it gives you the ability to help the bully. Because
Yeah.
like you said, it's like, okay, somebody's hitting somebody. Of course, we don't want people hurting each other. We're not necessarily allowing that, but it's going to happen. And how you deal with it and what you do next is everything. Just like you said, otherwise you're reinforcing the behavior. The
Yes.
behavior doesn't, or the need isn't met. So you,
Especially if we jump in and judge it from our
yes,
own selves. And then we become the bully if we're not
yes,
real careful. I have a
yep.
great article and I'll post it in the show notes of shame and blame. These
Mm.
accidental ways we use those things to try and solve behavior, and it doesn't work. And like you just said, it absolutely reinforces it, unfortunately, instead.
Yeah. And it becomes this loop, and then it gets
Yes.
harder, and we're
Yep.
then we're dealing with physical resistance, and
Hmm.
it gets to a certain size. You can't, I don't want to be dealing with that.
Yep.
And so, it's like, how can we move through it? Well, let's hear from them. Let's hear from the person who, two people are inequitable in the situation. Somebody is, in the case that somebody hit somebody, we'll just say that.
Hmm.
Um, the person that got hit is inequitable. They're hurt, right? They don't like that. The person who hit is also inequitable, whether we're seeing it or not. There's
Yeah.
inequity there that they might not know how to discuss, right? So
Yeah.
what if we unpack it and get through it? So that actually, I'll use my example. This one's good because it kind of shows that um, equity is always possible and can totally happen every time. And then sometimes you're just going to run into a situation where not everybody's ready. Not
Mm.
everybody's quite ready for that, to step into that skillful leadership. So this is when our program was still drop off. And so caregivers were always welcome to be, we always encouraged them to be there. but the caregivers of the learners this day were not present until pickup. So going back in time, child A
Mhm.
was started calling child B a name. Like they were, in my perspective, they were just being silly. And then it just kind of got a little bit personal. Like maybe there was something they thought of that happened last week. I don't know. So then they start calling them a name that child A didn't like, right? So child A hit them and child B hit them back, right? And this is all happening within like 30 seconds, right? So it's like in our environment, we are not going to say, we're not just going to say stop. We're going to skillfully intervene, get in between the physical, and take a deep breath ourselves and do our best to make contact and start moving through this process. Okay, and we also have a peace pole in our environment. If one person is talking over another at any point, we get to the point where we can come to the peace pole or talk one at a time. So it's relatively easeful to do that and quick. And so we get to the bottom of it, and we hear everybody's side, and then we ask what everybody needs and why that happened. And then within a matter of minutes, there's equity. Like child A is like, well, they called me a name and I didn't like it, so my body hit them. And these children, by the way, were 6 and 7.
Mhm.
Okay, so just to give you a reference, not that that matters completely, but does matter a little bit. And I hit them, and then they hit me back. It's like they totally understand at that point. They're talking through it. It makes sense logically, but like, what do you need? Like, why is this happening? What do you need? What do they need? And they achieved equity very quickly. They were able to talk it through, and they were both moving on to other things. They gave each other space. Cool. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's a very different outcome. Sometimes we have to physically walk away or go read a book or sing some songs. Like there's so many ways. In this case, boom, they're done. So I'm filing the incident report. Somebody got hit, 2 people got hit. So incident reports go to caregivers. It goes immediately to their email, and then pickup comes around. So child A's parents, and we also talk in person when they get there, just to make sure they know. Child A's parents get there, we discuss it, everything's good. Child B's parents get there. And even though there's equity all the way around, there isn't equity with this parent. Okay, great. So let's unpack that. Child B's parent is very unhappy that child A did not say sorry to their child. Okay, I hear you. And so this is when I'm like, well, they've achieved equity. They did not ask to be said sorry to. So there was I'm not going to make them say sorry. If you feel like sorry needs to happen, feel free to. Their parent is there. You guys can let me know if you need help, kind of thing. And then this parent who was concerned, they specifically brought up to me and told me that they had experience when they were young. This parent was a female, and she said she had an experience with some boys when she was young. And that's what she was thinking about. So, this was a girl and a boy child. So a boy hit a girl, but a girl also hit a boy. But in the parent's perspective and the caregiver's perspective, something else needed to happen because it was a boy hitting a girl. And she said that, that's what she said is why she was having trouble. And it was a beautiful moment to say, that's awesome. And I'm so glad that you can see that. And you have the self-awareness to be like, I know that I'm asking for this thing just because of my own experience. But I just kept going forward. Like, I'm not going to make them apologize. If somebody decides that they want an apology, then I'm happy to come in and help, or if there's another way I can help. But equity is actually achieved here. So let me know what you need to feel equitable. And over the course of a few days, we were exchanging email and just unpacking a little bit more about this democratic business and equity, and how this is our philosophy, and this is also in our handbook that you signed, and all these things. And so, although I'm not 100% sure if they felt fully equitable by the end of it, I do feel like equity was achieved. And so it's just an interesting point. Like, it wasn't all happy rainbows and sunshine, but still, even through that most very complicated, complex situation, it was equitable.
Such an important, thank you for unpacking that and sharing. It's so interesting how, and I see this all often, kids will have had an issue, they'll work it out in their own way, or maybe they'll get support, but then we have a need for them to do something more, or like in this story, something that's coming up for us in our past that
Yeah.
feels like the story isn't over yet. And so it's interesting when the situation is done in their eyes, they're over it, but we
Good.
come in and we're not ready. So that's something to definitely be aware of for our audience and us too. Sometimes
Yes.
we know we've got stuff that's blind and we're like, hopefully we can recognize it sooner rather than later and back off when we can. But
Absolutely.
definitely it's really, really important. And something that two things that I wrote down with that is, you know, I loved how you, instead of saying stop, because stop isn't helpful most of the time. It really isn't. It's a negative way to ask the brain to do something. It's not helpful most of the time because it's overused
Mhm.
also. But instead, coming in and separating, and like you said, sometimes it's quick. The kids are just off onto the next thing. Sometimes they need more support. But if we come in with our judgment, if we start pointing fingers or
Mhm.
even asking questions too soon, then
Yeah.
it changes the function of what the issue was to begin with. And here's the other thing. If we start digging into it too much without buy-in from the kiddos, we're actually reinforcing. Oh, that's where the sorry comes in. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
We force a sorry, then it actually gives the child that was um, the initial aggravator unfortunate power when we force them to do this, because if they resist, then we're at them, we're giving them so much power, and they learn quite quickly how to get power, and it's a really negative sense of power. And
Yeah.
so I am 100% with you, and I think a lot of our listeners are as well. Forcing sorries is not, it doesn't have the outcome that we're hoping it does. And I'll
Yeah.
just share, hopeful that, maybe it is hopeful that that child will come back and say, hey, I'm sorry. But to make them lie isn't
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah.
And something that I have had a lot of success with is if that child, that the victim, quote unquote, right? We want to be careful that we're not reinforcing things there because that can happen. But if they need a sorry, we can do that. We
Yeah.
can say, I'm sorry that you got hurt. I'm sorry that they did that to you. And then we're moving on. We're not going to dwell in this space. But we can absolutely apologize to that child for the situation.
Yeah.
um, we don't have to force the child that isn't sorry yet or isn't ready to be sorry to say it, because that does invite a lot of unfortunate outcomes.
Yes, absolutely. Such great points. And just a quick little thing before we move on,
Yeah.
just a little bit of this is a whole different episode and a whole different like mentorship, but just a quick little like, okay, you're in this scenario, somebody's hitting somebody and it's like, what do I do? Right? Well, if your skillful leadership isn't polished enough yet, well, like you said, like saying stop, like, yeah, of course, sometimes our immediate reaction is stop because and that's okay even if you do that. And
Mhm.
then or before, if possible, here's what you can do. You could say, child A, can you look at me? Like get on their level, can you look at my eyes? Or can you put your hands in your pocket? Can you, like, if they're
Mhm.
swinging, can you put your hands down? Like it just invites them, and it's a question, and it's positive. It's like, can you, instead of don't, right? And so
Mhm.
our brains just, they just do that. If somebody says stop or don't, it's a negative thing. And it's
Mhm.
just kind of how we're wired, especially depending on how our childhood starts, how our infancy starts, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just a little quick pro tip. Is like,
Yeah.
if you can pause and step back and use a question, and if you're very consistent with that, like, you're going to see impeccable results. Because one, not only does it work and it's like just how behavior works, that's great and all, it really does foster that sense of choice for the person. You're giving them consent and respect. And it's like, if in the case that they don't comply or pick one of those choices and they're still hurting somebody, you might have to physically help.
Mhm.
But in most cases, especially if this environment is consistently operated this way, you won't.
Yeah.
So there's definitely outliers, but that's just a quick tip.
Love it.
But we'll have to talk more about that another
Always.
time. All right. Okay, so now that we've given some real life examples of like where this stuff has come in real life and been helpful and how, Now I just want to go over just briefly, like, what are the characteristics of this? What is this really? And a little bit more about why. Um, and so, um, just a quick note on democratic versus democrat, because sometimes when I'm talking about this stuff, especially in the political state of our world and country, people just automatically think like there's a side to this, and it's like, well, no, not really. This is actually something that is trying to be like for everybody.
Mhm.
Democratic is just like it's a descriptor, right? So it's just something that's of democracy. And a Democrat is just a person of a certain party. And so that's not what we're talking about. And in true democracy, true equity can happen. And our country, we live in the USA, our country is a democracy, which is really awesome. And that's another great reason why you might want to incorporate these concepts, is because if we know how to operate in a democracy as a younger learner, maybe when we have the ability to vote, that might mean a little bit something different than it might at the moment. Um, and it really does work really well in small settings. So small scale democracy to me is kind of like small scale farming. It's going to save the world.
Yep.
But anyway, so just a little bit. I'm not talking about parties. I'm not talking about anything political, really, besides the fact that our country just is a democracy. Um, and so democracy is, by definition, as in republic, government in which the supreme power is held by the people and used by them directly or indirectly through representation, right? And so this whole concept of, okay, we have this thing on the table, we're discussing it, and we're voting on it. And there's a lot more to it, especially depending on your community, your community's needs, and your style. Like, might be a quick little vote, majority rules, or it might be we're going to unpack this. We have a meeting once a week, and we're going to, make sure that everybody feels equitable, yada yada. So everybody's voice is able to be heard, though. Um, and the reason that I got into all of this and kind of my launch pad was by learning about the Sudbury Valley schools and or slash democratic schools. Daniel Greenberg was the founder of the Sudbury Valley School. And so, yeah, I just got into learning about this and learning about the characteristics. And then it made a lot of sense to me. And hearing some of the testimonies on how that was working in their own environment, and just taking those concepts and just applying them in real time to my real community, even if it's just me and my daughter, my family, and then slowly working our way out. And then so characteristics of a democratic environment or slash community led decision making. Um, Everyone has a voice, first of all members, yes, even the youngest learners, all the way to the oldest. Like, you want elders in there, you want grandma and grandpa. Everybody's voice matters. So how can you do that in your specific community? In an educational scenario, classes are voluntary and self-directed. That's always been a part of our program, and I'd love to see that more. I feel like alternative education really needs self-directed learning. And so that can be, maybe you have two students who want to learn arithmetic, right? Okay, so they're coming together, they want to learn it, they're going to the person that teaches it, whether it's an older kid, maybe it's a mom, maybe it's grandpa, whoever, they're going to that person and they're negotiating together. This day and time works for us. And then they make a sign up list. And if you want to join, you do it, right? Okay, boom, they're doing it. And they're coming up with the agreements for that class, yada, yada. So voluntary classes. And then, this another characteristic is that this emphasizes the culture of equality. And I would say more so equity is what we're going for. Equality in that everybody matters just as much, but equity is very different. Like, equity is, I need a glass of water and you need to go run around. And we're both getting those things. Not we're both drinking a glass of water or we're both running around. So, shared responsibility. So again, it goes back to that autonomy equals responsibility. And it's collective decision making among everybody. So just the basic characteristics of this type of setting. Any questions on that or points on that?
Girl, yes.
Yes, I love
No,
it.
I think this is how learning was supposed to be. It's how we used to learn everything before it was all institutionalized and
Yeah.
systematized. It was such a more natural way. And you're right, when kiddos have more voice, they want to learn. Well, play is learning, but they do want to
Yes.
learn academics too. And when they have
Yeah.
more power and voice in that, it can be playful because when there's choice, there's an element of play in there. And I love the idea of, yeah, them coming up with a plan, doing the thing, and they have ownership of that. It's not the adult coming down, that top-down approach
Right.
of I'm the wisest one here, so therefore I need to tell you how to do everything. And,
Right.
fill up your vessel.
And then it's like, on top of that, it's like, okay, that takes the pressure off me as a mom. It's like, I can't teach her everything and I don't want to. Like,
Right?
there's so many people that are so much better at the things that she wants to do. Like, some of them, it's me, but most of them are going to be other people.
And
So, like, that aspect of community and support
yeah,
is critical to our education.
and I think that's why community is so essential because I think we've all experienced this. Our listeners here, sometimes we'll tell our kiddo to do something or we'll try and teach something and it's just not landing. But the minute someone
Yeah.
else does, it clicks. So,
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't think we should take it personal if our kiddo can't learn this thing from us. Let's just invite a bigger community and they will find their person that they can click with and learn the thing twice as fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. Because that's for the case for everybody. I'm just going to scooch down. I've got to plug
Sure.
my laptop up.
That
Happens.
happens. That
Okay,
happens. I
awesome.
think I'm okay for
All right. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I just love it. And of course, we're talking about all the ways that it's awesome, and super cool and great. And this approach really does create, excuse me, place-based decision making. And so, can you go that way? Thank you. So place-based decision making, right? This is important. It's just another way to say everything that we're saying. It can be truly based on your community, whether it's a micro community or a really big community. It's scalable, is what I'm saying. Place-based, fully scalable, and fully equitable outcomes all the time, you guys. It's like
yeah.
it's just so possible. And sometimes it's going to be hard. And sometimes it might not feel equitable at first, too. But if you prioritize making sure that um, everybody leaves that day or goes to bed that day or whatever the scenario is, um, without anything hanging on,
Mm.
then that's equity, right? And it's just so possible. It's a choice to go to bed still stirred up, you know? So, anyway, really cool approach. Um, and again, just a couple more of the pros: connection,
Mm.
responsibility, and meaningful work.
Mm.
That's a really big deal. Meaningful work equals meaningful learning, like we were just talking. The USA is a democracy, and equitable outcomes. And so, but on that note, I do want to talk about the cons, right? So we're talking about how awesome it is, but what about, like, realistically, what are the real cons of this? Because I think it's important. So one, it really requires consistency, self-awareness, and presence. Those are things that we've been threading through this whole conversation. And that's what I call skillful leadership. Um, and again, your community, the skillful leadership might be an elder who's been practicing this and has the wisdom and has the patience and all the things. But in your community, it also might be a younger member. It might be a mix. But I think that the most important thing is having at least two skillful leaders. Again, it doesn't matter their age, just two people, so that it's not just one, right? Just one doesn't really make a democracy. But two people that can come together and start doing this. And so why is that a con? Well, it takes work, it takes practice, it takes experience, and it takes failure. You're going to have a lot of times where you're not going to be good at it. But if you're dedicated to it and your community's dedicated to it, in no time, you're going to see the outcomes and you're going to see that turnover and you're going to see it integrate and become so easeful. Um,
I,
and so the other con that it's similar, but it's a very new concept for most people. So skepticism. And so that's the same with outdoor learning, alternative education, Montessori, Waldorf, whatever you want to call it. If it's new to you, you're first going to meet it with skepticism. It's everything in our life. It's just our human nature. So just know that even though that's a con, it's just something that's going to happen over and over and over again. Um, and so that's why it's important to have a couple skillful leaders to be able to navigate that, because skepticism is great. We do not have to agree to work together. And that's the whole point here. If you have skillful leadership, you're able to accept people's criticism and skepticism and take a deep breath and hold space and help them achieve equity. So if you're confident in this approach and you're confident in the skills, you are already equitable. And so it's now your job to help others achieve the equity. So those are the two main cons, in my opinion.
Do I have a comment? Well, yes, I do.
I knew it. That's why I left it.
So, like you said, it can be, to develop this framework for a setting, whether it's a home or a school or whatever. It's just like the snowsuit example. I mean, getting to the goal of outside is great and we'll get there, but that getting, the work of putting on the snowsuit and helping the kiddos and being present and patient with that applies right here too. If your goal is to be that skillful leader with someone else and or have that, in your community, it's going to take time, consistency, and yeah, not taking things personal.
Yeah,
Q-tip, it's a great positive behavior tip is quit taking it personally. Just let people speak their truth and acknowledge them, but you don't have to shift anything. And yeah, the work is worth it. It's never going to be easy. You're changing the way you do things. And as you continue to have confidence in yourself and develop trust, others will see and start to be like, oh, yes, this, I can see it. This is
yeah,
really, like you said, going to bed without things hanging over, releasing a child for the day, you know, without there being untied elements for sure. So, yeah, love
definitely.
it.
Yes. And again, it's just so possible. I'm not saying that you're going to nail it, and I'm not going to say that every community will be successful. But if you're consistent and you're dedicated to it, you will. And I've done it, and so many other people have done it. Again, this is not unique to me. I
Yeah.
just am one of the people who tried it and figured out, oh, this is actually true equity, right? And it's just something that I'm passionate about. I see it makes for better education, learning, your goals are met, your productivity is higher. This can be your business, your team,
Mhm.
your school, your family. I mean, it's so scalable. And yeah, so it's just up to you and another skillful leader to get it started.
Right.
Um, okay,
Okay.
so just a little bit more. The
Yeah.
next thing that I wanted to touch on is tips for navigating conflict. And we did go over just a little bit of that with the bullying. But the first one I have is help train and educate community members on self-awareness practices. Just a few examples I wrote here are deep breathing, reducing triggers, nonviolent communication, creating and enforcing boundaries, etc. Have clear understandings of what the community stands for, your core values, etc. Emotional intelligence is important and ripples out. And so these skills that I'm talking about are skills that Meagan can help train you on and educate you on. I can help you. There's lots of people,
Mhm.
but shameless plugs here. Like,
Yep.
just just help your community learn some of these core skills. Because one, we have to know how to navigate conflict internally if we're going to help be that skillful leader, um, and get some people together that also want to do it with you. Another one I have is the peace pole. So that has been
Mhm.
really successful. That's something that I pulled from the Montessori environment. A lot of people have heard of the peace pole. And so generally in our settings, we will have a peace pole that's made and designed and decorated by anybody that wants to. It's not something you have to be a part of, but you can be. So then you have a little bit of buy-in, like you mentioned, that type of phrase. Like, okay, so I helped make this peace pole and I
Mm.
want to be a part of using it, right? And
Yeah.
so the peace pole is just, it can be anything. It can be a stick, it can be a straw. I've used a pen. I mean, it could be anything. It could be really
Mhm.
decorative with beads all over it. It could be a feather, anything. Pick up a rock and call it a peace pole, whatever
Yeah.
you need to do.
Yeah.
But it's just this symbol of like, okay, you're holding that, so you're the one talking. And the
Mhm.
other members have the opportunity to be quiet and listen, just practicing those skills. Doesn't mean it'll be perfect. It's just an opportunity to slow down and let one person speak at a time and save your comments until you have the peace poll.
Mhm.
So yeah, try it out. See what you think. Um, Regular meetings and discussions, get something on the calendar and just stick to it. Like
Mhm.
there's always going to be an excuse. There's always going to be something that comes up, but just do it. Make it a point to have consistent meetings and discussions, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever fits your community. Just make sure that it's regular and that you stick to it and you have space for these discussions. Um, Ensure equity is achieved before everyone departs or moves on. This goes back to the skillful leaders. Yeah, you're just going to have to practice. And so if you're not sure how to do that, or if you're not sure if equity is achieved, just ask people like, how do you feel? Do you feel equitable? And if a member doesn't know what that word means, um, is there anything you need? That's another way that you can ask. Is there someone that can help you meet that need? Okay, I can't help do that, but did you ask so and so? Just learning some different language, learning those skills, but just try to make sure that equity is achieved before you break apart, before contact is closed. um and then the last one I put here is forgiveness, practicing forgiveness for yourself and for others,
Mhm.
slowing down. And in my personal opinion, prayer has been very helpful. Sometimes you just got to let things go and just uh take a step back and take a deep breath and just know that not everything is our weight to carry, and giving some of that back to God, your community, whatever it is, the universe, whatever resonates with you. Um, just know that you're doing enough because sometimes it might not feel like it, but you always are. Just make sure you're feeling equitable and you're doing what's equitable for you. So yeah, do you have any other tips for navigating conflict?
Um, uh, yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I could definitely talk about a lot more like specific strategies, but I think you know, what you talked about, I actually don't remember specifically what one of the strategies that you said, but what you're doing is helping replace behavior. So,
yes.
as a behavior consultant, that's what I'm always kind of,
Yeah.
okay, this happened. Okay, why? What was your part in it? Okay, cool. Now let's replace their behavior and your behavior. And that's the thing I want to talk about behaviors. We do focus on the children a lot of the time. It's their behavior, their behavior, their behavior, but we got to change our behavior first. We have to change our approach first. And that's the best news because it's much easier to change some things that we're doing just even microscopically sometimes,
Yes.
than it is to actually change someone else's behavior. So replacing our behavior. And what else did I love the peace pole idea, and I love that modeling, because you'll see it and I'm sure you have, maybe two kiddos will be kind of having an issue and one of them will pick up a rock as a peace pole. Like they'll start to implement these strategies within themselves. And
Yeah.
so that comes with our modeling. And the other thing that you mentioned that I wrote down is keeping meetings consistent. Get it on the calendar. It happens, come rain or shine. And it can be that can be hard sometimes, but when we do that, when we lean into that anyways, no matter what, we're modeling that consistency for our kids. And
Yeah.
so um that should help us, because sometimes it can be like, ugh, no one's feeling it. I'm not feeling I want to do the meeting, and clearly I know the team isn't really feeling it. We could probably do it tomorrow, but
Yeah.
if kids are a part of this and we can model that consistency no matter what, that's education.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's important education. I struggle with that. I'm a
Yeah.
very much tomorrow will work. That's not
Yeah.
good.
I
So
know.
consistency is generally not my strong suit. And so it's definitely something I'm trying to work on for myself and also be intentional with my modeling for my littles.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so relatable to, I'm guessing, everybody that's listening, everybody
Yeah.
out there, because we live in this world that we're so,
Mm.
even if we're super connected, like our lifestyle is connection. You and I both, like we live for this, and we're still so disconnected from most of our community. It's like we have to work hard to put ourselves in this place to make decisions together on purpose. And like
Mm.
I just recommend you go to a place where people are making decisions together. Like either start making decisions together with your community that you're in, whether it's your workplace, your family, it's just start with your family. And that can be one of the hardest places to start because like you possibly are a top-down approach family. And now you have to swipe that completely and start
Mhm.
allowing community-led decision, family-led decision making. And that's a big change.
Yeah.
But start practicing it wherever because coming together in community is really how this works. It works great on a micro level, but when you start integrating it with a bigger group, your kids, they see value in it more than just you. And I can say that directly. It's like my daughter definitely understands these concepts. She's been around them her whole life, and she believes me and she trusts me, right? But it's even stronger because other people are doing it. And
Mhm.
it's so important to us that other people continue to do it. And then that group grows because when we go to spaces where that type of decision making isn't happening, we struggle. It's like we struggle emotionally, we struggle with like our confidence. Like, do we need to leave? Like, what do we need to do? So I think it's important to, just shine that light a little bit and be that person and just start holding that space. But yeah, and I guess that kind of segues nicely to the last point I just wanted to touch on is I put here a faith-based perspective on leadership. And so uh, for our family, what really works for us is being in relationship and in community with others. And so as a Christian family, the Bible tells us that's how we are meant to live is with others and for others. Service is really important to us. And in order to be of service to anybody else, we really have to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves and serving the Lord. And so that's skillful leadership. And that's listening to the skillful leadership that was implemented for us, and then taking those concepts and living it truly for our family and then others. Um, and so I find it interesting that our program and our offerings have always been for everybody. It's true equity. We want true equity. We don't care about your background, we don't care about your faith, we're not trying to change anything. We just want to exist with people and be present. And so in the past, our community has been a really big mix of all kind of backgrounds, and it's been really cool. You just heard all the examples of how much equity that I've witnessed. And then very recently we've moved and we live work on a farm, and so our community has changed significantly. And we're surrounded by mostly Christian families, which is also awesome. And as far as these concepts go, it's been the flip side of that. So a lot of these concepts have not been dove into with a lot of these families,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of top-down approach at home with families, and it's just given me a lot of food for thought and a lot of opportunity to uh, just practice it being from a different angle in the community. My program isn't necessarily here on the farm. There's threads of it here, but we're not hosting a
Mhm.
program here, for example. So it's a different angle that I'm in. And it's just been even more reassuring to me of how important these concepts are. And so that's just the last thing I wanted to leave on was, again, faith-based perspective of leadership. And the reason that I started Unbound was a direct calling of God. And so I started the program, and I know that he told me to preserve this space for learners, hold space for them to have self-governance so that they can have the ideal relationship with him. Not my version of it, not your version of it, not what you think they
Mhm.
need to be doing. And now those dots are starting to connect a little more. When I first started, I didn't know all these things were going to end up how they are. But now reflecting, I'm like, okay, so now I am in this position where I have this experience. I've seen these dots connect. They're working, there's real equity. And now I'm in a community where they might not know about it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. And I think I told you, I'm like, I still don't know exactly what to do with all of this information, but I know I'm here now and something's happening. But if you are a Christian family, I just encourage you to, just take a look at a few Bible verses about what God says about children and learning, and just do your own research. I'm not here to sway you one way or the other, but I feel that if we want our children to have a true relationship with themselves, their creator, the earth, their peers, environment, their skills, all of that, it starts by working together in community and letting everyone have their voice. So, just a good way to wrap it up, I think.
I, yeah, I think that's actually perfect. I mean, I don't want to interrupt the vibe. I wrote down
Yeah.
skillful leadership. If you could explain what that is. I mean, we've described it in so many ways, but what is it to have skillful leadership or be a skillful leader?
Yeah. So my opinion is that, well, one, it kind of goes back to like educating ourselves and deschooling ourselves, I would say.
Mhm.
And so stripping away some of those cultural umbrellas and what education system might have been telling us, right? And how does learning actually work? Those types of things, like how do humans actually work? How do our brains actually work? And utilizing that. So again, self-awareness practices, knowing
Yeah.
how to slow down and get to know your nervous system, get to know your um, primary stress response and your regulation techniques, right? Because in order to serve others, you're going to have that in check. Uh, and so doing those practices and then get to know your community. Once you got a little bit of awareness about yourself, your job, in my opinion, next is to get to know the people right in front of you. What are their needs? What are they saying to you with their behavior or their words? And if you need help decoding that, reach out to Megan or me because we love decoding that stuff.
Mhm.
But get to know those things and then integrate those needs into the community. And to
Mhm.
me, that's skillful leadership. That's place-based leadership. That's to me, it's also faith-based leadership. It's like God is always there talking, and are we listening? And if we are, we're moving forward. Um, so yeah, again, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a grown-up. It can be, and that's awesome too. But it's not really about age; it's about the skill set. And so, if we can help that skill set ripple out to our greater community, we're going to have all ages having these skills, and that really is a great goal, I think.
I think that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And you're 100% right. Little ones, when they see us doing these things, even when we mess up and we take accountability for that, like that's the super gold. That's the super gold.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get it perfect, but they will start emulating these things
Yeah.
and becoming those skillful leaders. And
Yes,
that's
exactly.
awesome.
And then it just comes full circle at that point. You're
Yeah.
like, this is why we do it. This is why we do the hard stuff. This
Yes.
is why we slow down. This
Yes.
is why we let them climb the tree and fall off of it.
Yes.
This is why we do all those things.
This is why this is why we go through the process of putting those snowsuits on, even though
Yes.
it's torture for them, for us, or
Yep.
however that looks like, is so much goodness there. And
Yes.
slowing down and being present, being the point. Okay. Is that everything?
That's it. I
Okay.
know it's a ton, but that's definitely all of it.
I know you had a lot of things on your heart that you wanted to share, and I just love that we can get down and dirty with these things because behavior isn't everything. And
Yeah.
um, I'm just very thankful for you that, being my co-host of the Nurturing Nature Schools series. So yeah. So everyone listening, if you have, an, yeah, if you're interested in starting a nature school, Amber is your person to do that with. Even if some of this stuff resonates with you and you already have an nature school, reach out to her for sure. And we'll put links and stuff in the show notes. And if you are an already established nature school and you see your team kind of struggling with some things, you're seeing behaviors repeat, you're seeing some loss of dignity, power struggles for that defensive dignity, either from the children or from the adults, because that's how power struggles happen. That's how I help. You already have an amazing team, an amazing program, and I come in around the fringes and help your team see the nuances and replace some of those skills. So, and I actually have a masterclass coming up on the 20th. So if you're interested in learning more of these techniques or interested in booking a consultation with me, you can do that too. And I'll have those links below also. And so with that, thank you everybody for being here, doing this work with us. It's so important. Our kids are telling us it's important. If we look around, they're screaming for something different, more equity. And so we invite you to indulge in that and wherever your heart leads you. And so with that, we will wave goodbye. Bye,
You
everybody.
guys, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.